This is Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details. Here are your hosts, Joe, Matt, and Chris.
The wide receiver market in the NFL just got a big name added to the list as Cooper Kupp has been made available and is going to be working with the Los Angeles Rams for a trade partner. Now, he wants to go somewhere where he can compete for a championship, and he came out with a very lengthy statement on the socials to show you that he's still at top of his game, felt he had his best training camp he had in his entire career and is ready to go ball out for years to come. However, he is entering his age 32 season. We've seen receivers begin to decline at that point, and no one really believes he's still in his prime. They believe that he's more of a really good number two, someone that can help out a team, but isn't going to be the centralized focal point as a wide receiver one, similar to how people view T. Higgins right now as a possible candidate in that wide receiver one mold. But Cooper Kupp is still very good at his job, and when healthy, he can be very, very dominant. The problem is, over the last 3 seasons, he has missed 18 games, which is a problem. Now, if he can stay healthy, we all know what Cooper Kupp can do, but that is the question. That also brings up the question, how much teams are going to be willing to offer for Cooper Kupp services now? He is definitely going before June 1st. There will not be a post-June 1st trade on this guy because most of the cap savings they get happens on a pre-June 1st trade deadline where they'll get $12.5 million. The only other way is a post-June 1st trade deadline where they do save $20 million and they have $9.7 million dead cap in 2025 and $7.4 million dead cap in 2026, which would be better for their cap numbers and more money, but a post-June 1st designation, how does that work with draft capital if they're looking to spend draft capital in this draft? All that stuff and more we're going to talk about right now, and I'm going to give it over to our panel, and I'm going to go with Chris first on this one. Now, obviously, Chris, you're a Patriots fan. I know the first thing Patriots Nation did when they saw this was, we're going to trade for Cooper Kupp. We're getting everybody. And
typical.
Before I give it to Chris, I'm going to make something clear. All you Patriots fans out there who are feeding social media every time a big name gets mentioned, guess what? You want to know why we're a good destinations? Because we don't fucking have anybody, okay? That's why everyone's coming to New England, because we don't have anybody. So just get over it. We might get some of them. We're probably getting less than you want, and we're not getting the ones you actually want. So now that I got that out of the way, Chris. Now that I got it out of the way, Chris, what do you make of all this Cooper Kupp news? This is a big deal, and he does not want to go. He made it very clear he wants to be in LA.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't blame him. You know, he's been there for 8 seasons. You know, that's where he got drafted. I think very much like Myles Garrett. I think he has. I mean, he already has won a Super Bowl with them, but I think that he feels like his legacy is he's one of those, I feel like, blue chip kids, right? Where like you grew up thinking like whatever team takes you, that's the team you try to spend your entire career with. So I can definitely understand him not really wanting to leave. I understand it's a business decision. Quite honestly, I think a lot of us prior to like the step that they took like crazy towards like the mid part of the season, a lot of us already felt like Cooper Kupp was going to be on the trade block probably mid season. And then they took a run and they just held on to him after that. I believe it was right before the Patriots game where a lot of people were saying like, hey, like if they lose this game, they might be considering moving on from Coop. Right. And then they obviously blew us out of the water and everybody's like, oh, okay. So now they're on a little bit of a run. We'll keep him. We'll hang on to him. So I can understand him being upset. I can't say I'm overly surprised. I mean, I think Puka Nacua has shown that he is definitely see their wide receiver one. Also, like going into the draft, there might be some people that they're targeting, or maybe they're targeting some certain people when it comes to like free agency, or certain teams are targeting to work with. So it would make sense because you want something out of him, right? Like he's been one of your biggest receivers for such a long time, and you don't want to just see him go into free agency and leave and you really get nothing out of it. So much like what the Browns should be considering is like if there was ever a time to move him and get something out of it, this would be that time frame. And I do feel like there are a lot of teams that should be, quite honestly, blowing up the Rams telephones lines if people actually use regular phones these days. I don't think they do. To look at what they're asking for Coop, to be honest. I get it. He's a little bit older. He's been a little injury prone. There's really no surprise there. But quite honestly, like even this year, even though he only played 12 games, right? He had what was it, like 60, if I remember correctly, it was like 67 receptions, 710 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. You know, he had 100 targets still, only 12 games, still had 100 targets. And then he was still averaging about 10.7, so almost 11 yards per reception, which look at the man's 30 something years old. He's had, injuries, and yet he's still a really good, legitimate threat to defenses. So when you look at that, he's a Super Bowl MVP. He's won Offensive Player of the Year. Call me crazy, but I do think he has the ability and I do think he has a lot of tank, a lot of fuel left in his tank. To be honest, I think he does have the ability to still kind of take the top off defenses at times. But I agree though, I do think that he would probably be better off with a team where he can be kind of their legitimate, solid wide receiver too, right? Like you don't want all of the pressure to be on him. If anything, he's probably going to be your go-to guy because there should be a lot of look on to the wide receiver one. I think that's probably going to be his best go. And for that, I would look at the Commanders, to be honest. I haven't really looked at like where they're at with the draft. I know they're low in the first pick anyway. I don't know if they're going to get a one for him, so I wouldn't necessarily be worried about that. If you're talking about draft, I would probably look at maybe a second this year, maybe a second, a fourth, maybe a third next year, somewhere in that range. But the Commanders should be looking at him. You partner him with Terry McLaurin, who is their clear, bona fide wide receiver one, and I think you're cooking with grease there because you also have Jaden Daniels. Even though he's a rookie, we saw what he was able to do this season, and he's already taken them to the NFC Championship. So they're clearly already in 1 year turned around to be, a bona fide contender, and that's somewhere that obviously Kupp wants to be. He wants to be somewhere where he can fight for, the chip. Obviously, yes, as Patriots fans, you want to measure number one. You want anybody that's a tight end, not a tight end, but a wide receiver that is known, is a vet. Everybody, he's recognized everywhere. Like you want him to come in and immediately be your wide receiver one. He brings the Super Bowl pedigree. He to the wide receiver room. He'd obviously come in and basically be the leader of that team, hands down. I mean, you have Drake May. He's coming along. You have some of the veteran wide receivers already in that room that are basically trying to bring them in. Like I get it. I understand the excitement, but again, same to the Myles Garrett situation. I feel like he is also in that same realm where like he's older. He probably wants to go for another Super Bowl. He probably wants, I would say he would probably have at least another 3 or 4 years before it's probably time for him to like looking at retirement, so to speak, or maybe looking like a gadget guy. So with that, like, I don't think he would want to come to a team that's in their rebuild stage. So the only other team I really look at, if you want to look at him as maybe a bona fide wide receiver one for you, but you have a little bit of help around him, is the Bills. Again, we talked about them with Myles Garrett. I think the Bills are another really good shot. Allen needs a legit wide receiver one that has experience, that can bring along their rookie wide receiver, and he easily fits that mold. But again, both of these teams are Super Bowl contenders, which we know that's something that he's going to favor. So I think it's something that they look at. I honestly, I respect the Rams for at least giving him the heads up, like we're planning to trade you, but we're also going to help you basically find the spot where you want to go, where it's not just like, hey, we're trading you, you're going here, like we don't really care. You can tell that they care about him. They just know that it's time to move on, and I don't blame them. But it sucks, but it's it's part of the process.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of people right now are looking at a Cooper Kupp 2.0 in the draft right now. And he played the East-West Shrine Bowl game, actually broke Cooper Kupp's records at Eastern Washington University. And that's Efton Chisholm III. Cooper Kupp played predominantly in the slot this year. Chisholm is a predominant slot guy. Comparable snap counts to how they lined up out wide and how they lined up in the slot, yardage, things of that nature. I mean, so when you start to look at, what's available in the wide receiver market, I think that there's some sneaky good guys out there in this draft that could fill this sort of mold. And Chisholm, he kind of looks like a Kupp 2.0. I mean, that's kind of what people equate him to. He's a little bit shorter. He's 5'11", Kupp 6'2", but they're comparable in weight. Kupp's only comes in at like 205, Chisholm's 200. So, there's a lot of teams out there, and I think that's going to hurt Kupp's value a little bit, is how some people view the wide receivers and what Kupp is at this stage in his career. And really going to come down to what the Rams hope to get from him. I mean, I think this may be a get something rather than nothing. Because cutting him, you get nothing except for more dead cap and not as much savings, whereas trading, you get something out of it, So obviously we've been big Kupp believers here at Between the Uprights. We've talked glowingly about him and Puka Nacua together, and I'm going to go to the guy who has nothing but good things to say about Puka Nacua and the Cooper Kupp. I believe it was the Kuka. What was it? The Nooper Cup, Nooper, whatever. I can't remember the name you said, Matt, but it was hilarious.
Cooper Nacua Cup or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
yeah.
Puka Nacua Cup. Yeah.
What a terrible name. My goodness.
Oh, it was so great. So I'm going to go to Matt.
Jeez.
And Matt, I mean, this is a big deal. I think that, Chris said a lot of good things. I think he goes to a contender. I just don't know where it's going to be, but this is almost like there's no more sure thing than Cooper Kupp is not a Ram in 2025.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I mean, the Matthew Stafford Cooper Kupp connection, especially in that 2021 season, like I don't think anybody's ever going to forget that. Like I know, speaking for fantasy football players, those of us who had Cooper Kupp in that 2021 season, like, hey, I was in the playoffs for sure. Like that. Like it was crazy what he was doing on a game to game basis. And again, like you mentioned, Joe, the last few seasons, it's just been injuries that's got him. I mean, he's missed 18 games over the last 3 years, like you mentioned. So the injuries have got him. And Puka Nacua coming in obviously has been a hindrance to Cooper Kupp's performance, but obviously it hasn't hurt the Rams because we see Matthew Stafford. He just loves to spam one receiver. Like he has one good receiver, you're going to get the ball. Like Megatron, you're getting the ball. Cooper Kupp, you're getting the ball. Puka Nacua, you're getting the ball. Like he just gives the main man his receiver, and I'm not hating on Stafford for that. Like that's what you should do. Give your guy the ball.
Yeah,
that's what you should do. Like
Puka merchant.
It's the smart thing to do, So, and like you mentioned, he's turning 32 in June, so he is starting to get up there in age. He only had 700 yards this year, 6 touchdowns, and his contract is going to play a factor into this. He, like you mentioned, he's due $20 million in 2025. He's due $19.85 million in 2026. So it's going to be a factor to, as far as where he goes and where he doesn't go. And like we talked about, I mean, Cooper Kupp, like one of my favorite names in the NFL, just like his name, like it just flows, Cooper Kupp, what a name. Like it just flows really well, and he backed up the name with incredible performance for the Rams, and he's going to go down as one of the best players in Rams history when it's all said and done. So, and like I mentioned, 2021, I talked about this on a previous episode. Like 2021 has to be the greatest receiver season of all time. Like 145 catches, 1,900 yards, led the league in touchdowns, and then his playoff numbers, won the Super Bowl MVP. Like he's going to be a Rams legend forever. He's someone who's going to be in the Ring of Fame at whatever the LA Stadium's called. I don't even know what the LA Stadium's called. I was going to say the name of it. I don't know what the name of it is.
SoFi Stadium.
SoFi, there you go. Yeah, SoFi. Yeah. The one that the other team's fans always take over, no matter who the other team is. Crazy. But anyways. Listen, this situation right here, this Cooper Kupp situation reminds me so much of a situation that happened last year with another team that inhabits SoFi Stadium. Now I know the name of it. The Chargers with Keenan Allen last year. This situation is almost identical. Keenan Allen was 32. He'd had a couple of seasons where he'd missed 10 games in his previous 2 seasons. Cooper Kupp's been banged up the last couple of years. They're both kind of similar receivers, 2 slot guys, possession guys. They're going to get open. They're going to find the holes in the zone. They're really smart. They're really high IQ players, and they're going to go to teams that are either looking to come up like Keenan Allen did last year with the Bears, or teams that are ready to contend right now. And I think that's going to be somewhere where Cooper Kupp wants to go. So I was going to say the Commanders, but Chris said the Commanders. So I'm going to completely switch from that and pretend like I wasn't actually going to pick the Commanders. I'm going to pick a team that also, again, inhabits SoFi Stadium. I think a really good option for him would be the Chargers. I think going to the Chargers, pairing with Justin Herbert, he's really familiar with those slot guys. Obviously, we've seen what he's done with Ladd McConkey. We saw what he did with Keenan Allen. I think a really good fit for Cooper Kupp would be going to the Chargers and pairing up with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, again, I talked about this on a previous episode as well. He's kind of a similar style quarterback to Matthew Stafford. He's big, tall, huge arm, smart quarterback. He can get out of the pocket. He can make big time throws from all arm angles. So I think Cooper Kupp would be a really good fit. He could kind of impart some of Stafford's wisdom into Herbert, kind of from a third party. But I think Cooper Kupp, we're going to see him on the Chargers next year, and it's going to be something different, because not for Kupp, because he's still going to be living in Los Angeles, but something different as far as the team goes, and it's going to be a nice change for the Chargers.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like Chris's pick as well. I actually had 2 picks where I thought this was going to go, and mainly because I liked what this first team that I'm going to say did in the offseason from a coaching hires perspective. The Chicago Bears. I think the Chicago Bears, as Keenan Allen is a free agent, why not take a chance on Cooper Kupp, who, I believe at this point in their careers, Cooper Kupp's a little better. I mean, you could compare them. It's a similar situation. I think that the Bears would be willing to take a flyer on him. They already have, Odunze. They have DJ Moore. They have DeAndre Swift. They just got, a brand new, brilliant offensive mind there in Ben Johnson. So, I mean, they have a very good structure where they could use a wide receiver. Another team that I'm very interested in that might be willing to pull this trigger is another team with a very young quarterback that could use a little extra boost in the wide receiver core. How about Denver? Denver with Bo Nix and Sean Payton's offense, getting a reliable slot guy there, someone you can really count on in Cooper Kupp to really bring out the rest of this wide receiver core, which had some stalwarts in it that showed up in there. Mims did very well. Troy Franklin showed up a little bit, and we saw Cortland Sutton have his second 1,000-yard season. But I think that, when you start to look at some of these young teams, I mean, Denver was right there. They were a playoff contender. Were made the playoffs this year. They're, getting closer. They're a little bit away. We saw the offense didn't quite have the juice to keep up with a high-flying offense like the Bills. The Bears, who we think, based on all the turmoil that's happening in the NFC North, may have a shot at the division. If you watch one of our previous videos about the Bears and the hiring of Ben Johnson. So those are really good options. But Sammy, this is a done deal. We know he's leaving, but where else could you possibly see Cooper Kupp going if it's not one of the teams we've already mentioned? Because it's definitely not going to be in a Rams uniform for sure.
Were the Bengals mentioned at all? I don't believe they were, and I believe they are the team that I believe, and this is my prediction. I'm calling it. I think T. Higgins is going to walk. And I think the Bengals are going to trade for Cooper Kupp, and they're going to draft a receiver. I believe that T. Higgins. I know Joe Burrow loves T. Higgins. From the very beginning, T. Higgins has been there. And when Jamar Chase is out, Joe Burrow looks at T. Higgins, and T. Higgins has typically answered the call. But you can't afford him. You can't afford T. Higgins. You just can't. If you want your defense to get better, you can't. And the defense was trash. So we need to move on from that. Look, Jamar Chase alone is enough to make you can afford to let T. Higgins walk, make a trade for a receiver like Cooper Kupp. The Bengals are still contending. I know they had a rough year this past year. They're still a contending team as long as they get their defense right and as long as they have Joe Burrow as their quarterback. So, in my opinion, I think the Bengals are the team that are going to be definitely a team to watch, and also the Commanders. The Commanders might want to double down on getting a receiver next to Terry McLaurin. Cooper Kupp is a very reliable slot receiver. You have your guy in Terry McLaurin, and De'Ami Brown showed a lot of flashes. So I think that receiving core can definitely make some noise. And yeah, those are the two teams that I was looking at. I think it's important to note that the Rams themselves are the ones that are trading Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp did not request this trade. Cooper Kupp wanted to stay in LA for the entirety of his career. He wanted that. But the Rams, smartly are saying we got to move on if we want this franchise to move forward, we got to trade you for assets. It sucks because they felt like Cooper Kupp, especially during that Super Bowl, I felt like, LA was just going to keep him for the rest of his career. It does suck, but I think the Bengals are the team. The Bengals are the team that I think are Joe Burrow is going to look for. And I think they can afford to I think they can afford it. I don't think they need to pay T. Higgins any crazy money. I think they also have leverage in contract negotiations with Cooper Kupp, since Cooper Kupp is kind of entering the twilight of his career. So he can be a bit cheaper and still a reliable alternative. Only thing is injuries. That's really it for Cooper Kupp. We got to see if he could stay healthy. But I think it's possible. I think it's very, very possible that he could stay healthy for 1 to 2 more seasons, fully healthy. And, who better to throw the ball to than who better to catch the ball from than Joe Burrow at this point? In my opinion, and I firmly believe this, if the Bengals had an average defense, Joe Burrow would be the MVP of the league. I firmly believe that, and I believe that Cooper Kupp would be a perfect fit, guy in the slot. The Bengals can draft another wide receiver to develop while Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp do some work, and I think this is the move. I think this is the move that the Bengals need to make because, look, you can't afford T. Higgins at all. and you need to work on that defense. This trade, it will probably be like a 4th, 5th round pick, in my opinion. Make that trade happen, and then, I mean, again, 5th round pick, you can afford to lose that. Build the defense up. So I think the Bengals are the team that should be on the phone right now, saying, how can we get this deal done?
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.